the Around the NFL podcast. The alternative rock of football podcasts.
Welcome to another edition of the Around the NFL podcast. I'm Gregg Rosenthal in a virtual room filled with a hero. Marc Sessler is with me on a show unlike any other, Marc. We've never done a mini post-Christmas recap. I hope your Christmas was great. Consider this like the Heat and Light podcast, except it's like the cold and dark podcast.
Yeah, there's a very similar vibe to that show and what we're about to bring to the listener right now. I hope you had a good Christmas too. We texted a little bit late at night. There was nonstop football starting here on the West Coast at 10 a.m. until deep into the evening, and I think that's how the NFL wants it.
It was a lot of football. It's not going to be like that every year. It is rare that I guess Christmas will fall on a Sunday. I did go back. I noticed last time it was on a Sunday, it was 2 games, though. So they did push it a little farther. In 7 years, I'm looking forward to the podcast when there's 7 games on Christmas Sunday.
It is impending.
Yeah, Justin Graver, also with us. Dan is sitting this one out, and we'll be back with Dan on our regularly scheduled Tuesday show. I hope everyone out there had a great Christmas, including you, Justin. And let's get to the first game. Let's start in the AFC, where the biggest games were really played. I think the best game that we haven't covered, we have Christmas Eve to cover, and the 3 Christmas games. The best of those games was played in Miami.
Second down and 6 now for Miami at the 31-yard line of the Dolphins. Snap to him, looking right. Heaves it right side. Intercepted by Rasul Douglas. And there is your dagger.
The Packers defense coming through in a big spot out of nowhere. 26-20. That was Tua Tagovailoa's 3rd interception of the 4th quarter alone. My God, what a meltdown after the Dolphins raced out to a 20-10 lead, had a chance to go up even bigger before halftime, and then it all fell apart in the second half, Marc. The Packers are alive in the playoff race, and the Dolphins let you down, because I know you wanted the Dolphins to win this game, right?
You know what I want to see was just the Dolphins kind of prove that the troubles they encountered over the last, 3+ weeks outside of the Buffalo showing were atypical of them, that they aren't that team, that they had a chance to, in a young system, first-year head coach, come back and show they were the team from the early part of the season. I mean, instead, it keeps Green Bay completely alive, and I think this is a very different Packers team than I feel like I was watching, weeks ago. They've kind of changed themselves, especially on defense. But the narrative around Tua, I think it's really fair just to look at his body of work over the last, 3-4 games and say, there are a lot of questions about Tua. Like, he was in the perfect environment, the perfect scheme. And, the Packers didn't use a ton of man-to-man coverage the same way that we saw early on with the Niners game and then against the Chargers. It was a lot of zone, and they still figured him out. He seemed sort of lost to me. I thought all 3 of his picks were really on him. It wasn't one of these situations where if you watch it, it's bouncing off of 2 people. He admitted each of them. He went through one by one each of the picks and just sort of said, the last one was a communication issue, but they were on Tua, and it sabotaged the Dolphins, who really had no business losing this game with all the big plays they got early on.
Right, like you mentioned it, the Packers defense in the first half of the game was the Packers defense we saw all year. They had 270 yards at halftime, the Dolphins. I thought they could have had about 35 points at halftime, and Tua was playing great. I mean, he was throwing the ball with anticipation, and it was right on the money. You had that 80-yarder to Jalen Waddle. At one point, Tua had completed 5 passes for 192 yards, which is just wild. And they were up 20-10, and the defense for the Packers looked like they weren't going to get a stop. And Jarran Reed caused a fumble right before halftime. It was 20-10, and the Dolphins were theoretically driving to go ahead, maybe 27-10. At that point in the game, the only way the Dolphins had stopped was penalties and like mistakes. Tua actually fritzed out and fumbled the ball on the third down early in the game. That was a little canary in the coal mine for what was going to come, because there was a couple times in the game he just did not show much poise, but they recovered that fumble. They kicked a field goal on that drive, and the Packers seemed like they had no answer. They forced the fumble there. They get a field goal before halftime. It's only 7 points, and then the second half defensively was totally opposite. This is a majorly concerning game for Tua. We'll get to Green Bay quickly. We're not going to make this an hour-long show. Mark, I know you don't want that.
I do think the one thing about Green Bay that felt to me like Aaron Rodgers, for all the little items that I find annoying about him at times, he seems locked in on the fact that their playoff chances are real right now. He mentioned it over and over. Everything went right on Saturday for Green Bay. And I thought they approached this game with a kind of win or die situation. They went for 5 fourth downs. I think they converted 3 of them. They had that bizarre fake punt from their own 20, which was a botched job. But to their credit, the defense from their own 20 allowed just a field goal to Miami. That could have been like a back-breaking kind of situational problem for Green Bay right there. I thought they were very aggressive. Aaron Rodgers didn't look perfect to me. He made just enough throws. I think we got to see what goes on with Christian Watson, because it's a hip injury. And, that to me, losing him is a major issue for Green Bay. If he goes out, he's been a star for them.
Yeah, it was weird because they actually weren't unbelievable offensively. Off all those turnovers, 4 turnovers, they scored 9 points. So they didn't get a touchdown off the turnovers. And then they had the kickoff return to start the game, which returned the ball to about the 10-yard line. Keyshawn Nixon, who also got hurt. So 2 explosive players for the Packers, Watson and Nixon, got hurt, and they only got 3 points off of that. So Rodgers was up and down, and I thought it was telling. He had told the announcers, I'm glad I can really play quarterback this week. I hated the way the Rams played us. And what that meant was Rodgers was going to just hold the ball forever, try to make a play, make some hero ball plays, and he hit a bunch of them, and he missed a bunch of them too. He did not play well in the first half, but he got it done. And the Tua interceptions, you mentioned how he went through it one by one. Okay, the third one to me was by far the most concerning, because at that point he had already been picked off twice in a row to start the fourth quarter. First one was just a bad throw where he tried to force it in there between 4 guys, and it would have had to been perfect, and it was just a bad decision and a bad throw. The next one, Raheem Mostert and him weren't on the same page. That one's hard to really know what happened there, but another play where it seemed like Tua predetermined what he was going to do, and that was what happened on that last play. Some smarter people than me pointed out, Tua, has the open receiver underneath here. The coverage dictated he absolutely had to throw it to the underneath receiver. It would have been a first down, and it was like he was already in his own head and was gonna throw the deeper throw, and the Packers read it and picked it off. And I give them credit for making a bunch of plays, but Tua, oh man, to have that sort of confidence issues coming into the home stretch. Mike McDaniel was asked about it after the game, and I thought what he said was pretty telling.
It's a challenge, but it's also something that, every quarterback really goes through. It's it's kind of one of those, necessary things that you have to really figure out how you don't let mistakes snowball. And that's one of the reasons, the approach and the way we've gone about things has been so intentional in that regard, because you can't let past influence the present. And I think that there could be some portions of that have to do with him kind of snowballing in his own mind. But he's such a strong individual that the good news is that I'm very confident that he'll be able to get through that. It's just that this team needs him.
It's a chunky soundbite there. Sometimes McDaniel feels like you're driving across the country with someone and he's riding shotgun, and you realize he just talked for 6 straight minutes, and you're just focused on the road. But I
am that person though. But that soundbite was concerning though. Like I think he was kind of saying like, yeah, I am a little concerned. That was a question about Tua's confidence specifically.
Well, I mean, remember, Tua. First of all, on the Mostert throw, he said that he might have called. He was wondering if he called the wrong play. Which is, that's a concerning thing in December. I don't know for a quarterback if that just stuff happens here and there. I would imagine it does, and you work your way out of it. But this is a guy that, like, that story came out mid-season where he was asking himself a year ago, do I suck at this? Like, I mean, I think there is maybe not a steel confidence there with him. And secondly, you look at this offense and the way he's been helped by Tyreek Hill and Jalen Waddle, just like point of the catch stuff where it's like if he had 2 pedestrian wideouts, you're getting the Tua from other years. And so I do think his game's been elevated by that, and teams have figured him out to some degree. I think there's a competence thing going on, and like Mike McDaniel sounds a little down there. They've got the Patriots on the road, and then they've got the Jets who have Mike White back in the finale. So their path to the playoffs, which seemed assured, is in hot water right now. Right.
They've lost 4 straight. They're still in good position. You win those 2 games, you get in. Even if you split those games, you have a decent chance, but there's a whole mess of things going on. And the fact that the broadcast talks so much about, like, you had to rebuild to his confidence. Like, I love the honesty, and I love, like, these guys being open and vulnerable, but sometimes you almost you want your quarterback to have this blind confidence. And Tua was also, quoted earlier this year or in some reports that, like, after that concussion, like, he had talked to his family about his future as a pro, and it's a lot. Everything feels like on the precipice for this team. Playoffs, future of this team. We don't need to get into all that now. Quickly on the Packers, they're at 7-8. Everything that needed to happen for them this weekend did happen. The Lions lost, the Seahawks lost, the Commanders lost. Even the Giants, who in theory could, I guess, be in that mix of falling out of the playoffs, lost. The Packers have a good chance to make it to the playoffs if they win their final 2 games, which will not be easy, against Minnesota and Detroit. There's a real chance, Mark, here. Detroit, Green Bay is the final game of the year on Sunday Night Football. Although about 4 things need to happen for that to happen, and that would include the Commanders and the Seahawks losing in Week 17. That would set up a win-and-in playoff game between the Lions and the Packers.
I'm willing to accept at this point that the Green Bay Packers are probably going to the playoffs, and some poor division-winning team, well, I guess it would probably be, I don't know. It's going to be some poor division-winning team is going to have to deal with Aaron Rodgers, who's becoming increasingly
Minnesota or San Francisco.
I know. I just think that's sort of
sort
of a hot mess for whoever has to confront Green Bay in January out of nowhere.
We'll talk about it during the week. I'm not totally buying that they're going to pull this off, but I got to admit, I think they make it more interesting. So I enjoyed this result, if only because it makes the AFC race messier and the NFC race messier. Let's go to the other AFC game. Someone locked up the Dolphins. Gravedigger, how was your Christmas?
It was great. We had a really nice Christmas, Jessica and I, with some family FaceTime calls. But I did lock up the Dolphins, so they kind of ruined my Christmas a little bit in the morning, but enough time to get over it later in the day.
I don't get the sense
Did you even watch this game, Gravedigger?
I watched the last bit I saw Tua's last interception.
I love Graver. He's a football guy. I don't get the sense that losing this locker, that the Christmas Day results, we're getting him too worked up. And that's to your credit, Justin. That's a compliment.
You're also so far removed from the top slot that the drama around you winning or losing on a weekly basis has been diminished.
Yes, I'm 5 games back of Greg now. I'm in last. Greg's
even though
first.
I lost this week, so you didn't lose any ground. You're still in it. 8 to play. You're not in it at all. You know who is in it? Just barely. The Pittsburgh Steelers. Let's get to their game.
Shotgun snap. 4-man rush. Fires for the end zone. Touchdown. George Pickens. And the Steelers forge ahead with just 46 seconds left. Pickett to Pickens. Oh, yes.
Oh, yeah. Pickett to Pickens, Pickett to Pickens. That was WDVE. Bill Hargrove on the call, along with Craig Wolfley. I don't think I've ever read the call letters before. This is, new times here, 10 years in. I totally forgot on the Dolphins game, too. George Pickens capped a stirring finish On the 50th anniversary of the Immaculate Reception, in the week that we lost Franco Harris, Kenny Pickett had a drive that he's going to always be remembered for. I kind of hope he has a great career with the Steelers, just so that we can look back, Mark, on this one as like the moment it all took off and they knew that Pickett was their guy.
Yeah, it's his second fourth quarter comeback of his rookie season. And I mean, we forget because it seems like a million years ago, but that Saturday cluster of games that was so impacted by weather, that was absolutely true in this one too. I thought it was just absolutely frigid out there. And both offenses were pretty much asleep at the wheel for large chunks of time. So to see Pickett to go do that at the end was commendable. I think that the way that they got to that 13-10 result was a Raiders offense that the things that have worked for them completely dried up. I mean, you have Devontae Adams, 15 yards on the day. Josh Jacobs held to 44. It's the first time he had under 100 total yards from scrimmage in 7 weeks. That's sort of been the key to their offense in general. And you have Derek Carr completely melting down when it mattered most. He was 1 for 9 with 34 yards and an interception of passes of 10-plus air yards. So they had really very little vertical attack to speak of. In the Raiders, which I thought were a fraudulent team, although they were getting a little spicy, in a big spot against a Steelers team, they really should have viewed themselves as a better than Pittsburgh in general. I don't know if they are. I think the Steelers are going to end up with a winning record. They're going to do it. They're going to beat Baltimore and Cleveland, and this whole Tomlin first losing record business is not going to happen.
It would be funny if they went 8-1 again, like they get a tie in one of these two games and do that back-to-back years. The Steelers are not out of the playoff mix yet at 7-8, but unlike a lot of AFC teams that are 7-8, the Patriots, for instance, the Steelers are buried in tiebreakers. They're still only 11th in the conference. Their percentage, according to 538 to make the playoffs, only went up from 1% entering the week to 3% coming out of the week, and it's because they're 2-7, or now they're 3-7 in the conference, and they basically lose every single tiebreaker there is. And if the Dolphins or Chargers, if the Dolphins win another game, basically they're out, or they each win one more game. So they still almost certainly aren't going to make the playoffs. But I think you can remember this game, if you're a Steelers fan in the end of this season, is something encouraging. Cam Hayward was awesome. You mentioned the defense was dominant. The Raiders' last 9 drives after they had the touchdown drive to start the game, they had a total of 7 first downs, and Carr threw 3 interceptions. In the second half of this game, Mark, the Raiders had 50 yards and 3 first downs. So you're right, even though Pickett got his chance to do it, and he did make good, it really was a good drive, and he played a good fourth quarter. They had 3 points entering the fourth quarter, and they scored 10 in the fourth quarter, and the weather was absolutely a huge factor. It still is something that Pickett, in the big moments, made some big throws. He had one on the sideline. The touchdown was a rip, certainly. He made good decisions, and Carr just didn't, man. That last interception, the guy's open, and you mentioned Jared Goff struggling in the cold the other day. Derek Carr's numbers in weather under 40 degrees is outrageously bad, and this was the story of the Raiders season, and these late season results, I think, have impact on what's going to happen moving forward, and I just don't think the Raiders are going to have Derek Carr next year.
I completely agree with you. I think this is the kind of thing where, and if you go listen, you could find this on Twitter pretty easily. Josh Jacobs, what he had to say about essentially the entire offense, the plan, what's told to them before the games, and what the results are, seems so dejected and down. I doubt that Josh Jacobs is back. I don't think Derek Carr is back. Well, I'm saying they could offer him money and no one else does, and maybe he changes.
Maybe a
tune.
Tag for him. That
sure,
wouldn't be that crazy.
But I listened to him speak, and he just seemed, and of course, it came after a loss, but extremely dejected. And I'm with you. I don't know how you can really roll out the concept of Josh McDaniels and Derek Carr next season when it's as easy to get out of his deal as it is, depending on what comes their way. Like if it's a Tom Brady situation, check you later, Derek Carr. But if there's nothing available, then they run it back perhaps. Yeah,
they could probably get a good pick for Carr, I think. But I do think this has probably been Carr's worst season since the first season after his broken leg, where he kind of struggled when he first came back, and then since then it had been a slow build, and he's been struggling. And I loved for the Steelers to all come to the stadium wearing the 32 jersey. and they have the emotional halftime celebration. It just felt like the most Steelers thing ever. This is why you knew, Mark, that like you've watched enough Steelers over the years, that the Steelers, even though this is a weird Steelers season, we're going to create something magical. And like I said, on the 50th anniversary of that game, they scored 10 points in the fourth quarter to win 13-10. 50 years ago, they scored 10 points in the fourth quarter to win 13-7. Like on a day with absolutely no offense. You locked it up. That was smart of you.
I felt it was one of the rare times where like I switched my lock and I just felt like, wait a minute, this is a home run because there's so much weight on this franchise, and not a negative weight, just a total absolute passion to go win this game after what happened with Franco Harris. And I was gutting it out. I mean, it was just, it was tight, but somehow you just believe in Tomlin and the Steelers in situations like this. And again, I think they beat Baltimore, who is a compromised team right now, and they will beat Cleveland, and they'll end up 9-8, and we'll see what happens from there. This is an absolute Steelers-esque end of the season.
Absolutely, and their young guys stepping up, like Najee Harris having the big game. He had 105 yards from scrimmage, was the key guy. Pickens, Freiermuth ended up having they have to feel about as good ending the season as any team that really has no shot to make the playoffs just because of their young players. And anyone that jumped in with the Rainmaker this weekend is feeling good too. We're raining down money on Christmas Eve. It was close. Some might say, why didn't I lock up the Steelers if I was gonna, go Rainmaker with a 2.5-point favorite? But you know what? They won by 3, so it rained just enough.
You're, in your own way, you're very much a Santa-esque figure to the people that followed your advice on this one.
Well, I know Dan would have gotten on me eventually for a losing streak here, so I think the Rainmaker, I had lost track of what my record is. It's like 6-3, something like that for this season.
Inflate it, because we don't know either. So just
nobody knows. Let's take a quick break, and we'll get to the other two games. All right, we're back. Let's head out to State Farm Stadium in Phoenix.
1-yard field goal. The kick airborne by Suckup. Is it good? It's good. It's good. And the Bucs beat the Arizona Cardinals in overtime. Buccaneers beat Arizona in OT. Tom Brady engineers an overtime drive that gets in the range of Ryan Suckup, who just made his 4th field goal of the game. And the Buccaneers win 19-16. How about them Buccaneers?
Oh, Gene Deckerhoff. Even Gene didn't give like a full-throated, this is a miracle victory on Christmas. He knew this was a weird game. A 19-16 overtime victory for the Bucs. That was on WFUS. Dave Moore also involved. And they're making people work extra on Christmas, Mark. They're playing extra football. Tarico's there. Collinsworth is there. And the Bucs are just replaying the same game that they play all season, making a 10-point comeback in the fourth quarter to narrowly beat one of the worst teams in the league. They've done this exactly 3 times now, but get the victory.
Yeah, I don't know if it's the plan, but they are following the blueprint over and over. And it was like Tom Brady, a turnover machine, completely asleep at the wheel with an offense that, lost another. Josh Wells, they lost another tackle. He was already in there for Donovan Smith. So they are compromised. I think that affected what they even thought they could do on offense. It turned into like just a get rid of the ball kind of game for Brady. Totally unproductive until that overtime drive. I think he hit six straight throws, and you get another one of these sort of Brady-esque patented last-minute victories. I do feel like this season, and maybe it's just a feeling, but so many bad games have gone into overtime. Not good games going into overtime where that you want that, but like I texted you like late in the night, you and Dan and Gravedigger, thinking, are you seriously taking this into more time, this game, which I actually watched? I might have been one of the 12 Americans that watched this game, and it was an unrewarding stew late in the evening.
I have to admit I did catch up on this game after the fact, and yeah, it was a lot of bad football. That's what Tom Brady said earlier in the year when he watches football around the league, a lot of bad ball. And most of this weekend was about the weather. And there have been a lot of fun, good teams. I think not in the primetime games, but we keep getting these teams like the Bucs and the Cardinals as repeat visitors. And we've just seen this Bucs game before, and it's kind of like they keep doing the same thing. They have these sequels to like what was not a great movie in the first place, which was Bucks Rams. I think that's really where this started, where they were absolutely terrible, and then at the very end they go hurry up and Brady wins the game after getting like 17 chances to win it. And now they're having like the sequels, and they're not like, they're getting a little worse each time. There was the Saints one that was a crazy comeback, 2 touchdowns at the very end, and then this one where it was against, I believe, the worst team in the league, and it just makes you wonder, why do they have to wait till the very end to go hurry up? They're such a better team when they go hurry up. Brady had his best 2 throws of the day in overtime that you mentioned. 2 really nice throws, one to Gage and one to Mike Evans, both outside throws. But the rest of the game, like, he was off target. He missed throws. They were out of sync on 3rd and short. At one point, they tried to run the ball 3 straight times on 2nd and 1 and could not get a yard. And that's like what this season has felt like, is just like looking at Todd Bowles being like on the sideline, dumbfounded, being like, man, I can't believe we can't get a yard. What's going on? But they never can get a yard.
Yeah, it's like, I mean, if these are sequels, they're not exactly pack them in at the mall fair, but it does kind of leave me a bit mystified with this whole journey with the Bucs, because the whole calling card coming in, the reason that it would be good to get Bruce Arians out of the mix, and again, I think we've said it all year, I think there's something missing without Bruce Arians playing his old role, but it was meant to be a positive because Tom Brady and Byron Leftwich could mind meld on a micro level during games, and as forming the game plan, and they look more lost than ever, and they haven't adjusted their way out of it. Like, even from drive to drive, it seems like all they're able to do is go out and process things the same way and produce the same sort of milquetoast results. It's like, where's Brady in this? Like, where's Leftwich in this? And why are they still in these issues post-Christmas? I find it really strange for that kind of quarterback after what we know about Brady.
Well, because I think it's everyone. It's such a team sport. I mean, Mike Evans had 1 catch for 5 yards until the very end of this game. He had 6 targets. He ends up making a catch or 2, but it's like they have a million different problems. And Brady's one of them. Like, the 2 he's not used to throwing interceptions. And he threw 2 in this game. Both were on him. One he just kind of threw up right because he was about to get hit. And then the other one, he was like really late on an open receiver, and that got picked off by Marco Wilson. And that was like totally on Brady. And we sound so negative. They did win the game. They set up, a win-in scenario for themselves next week against the Panthers. The Bucs clinched the NFC South with a win next week. But if they lose that game, the Panthers have control going into week 18. And my feeling watching this, Mark, was I have given up. I'm sure everyone else has too, in terms of them like having the light switch on. But I kind of feel like they're a little bit like the Patriots, and that they just are asking to be put out of their misery. And, spoiler alert, I'm picking the Panthers this week. I don't know if the Panthers can close it out and win 2 straight, because the Bucs will still have a chance to win the division. Even if they lose in week 17, if the Panthers then blow it in week 18 and the Bucs win, they're all division games. So like, the Panthers do not clinch the division by winning this next game, but this feels like a team that's not having fun and needs to be put out of their misery. Quickly, I'm just going to throw to a Tom Brady sound, because I think the way he sounded after the game sums up what I'm talking about.
Defense really stepped up. This was a great way to, down 10 in the fourth quarter on the road. It's great to find a way to win.
What's going on here? Is he okay? I don't know. I listened to this. He sounded so old.
He does not sound enthused. I will note that the Panthers, when they played the Bucs the first time, more towards the middle of the season, did run for 173 yards. I think this Panthers team, when they get weird and when the ground game is working as it has and when it's exploded a couple weeks, like, you could compromise the Bucs, because I just don't see them really able to put up more than 16, 17 points, and the Panthers defense has been solid for the past month.
Yeah, we'll talk about that later in the week. And you're right, the Bucs run defense isn't quite the same. Credit to your guy Trace McSorley. He fought. He almost got it done. They were up 10 in the fourth. He had a throw or two. He has a big arm. I was surprised by that, unlike that Hail Mary and a couple of things. J.J. Watt played great. Their defense has been playing hard, but it wasn't enough. What a painful season for the Cardinals to go through all these different ways to lose painfully in primetime, kind of like the Raiders season, but in a different, even more pathetic way. We can talk Bucs later in the week, but finally, let's get to the final game we're going to cover. That was the Christmas afternoon game, Broncos and Rams in L.A.
Rams have 3 takeaways on the day, all of them interceptions. Can they get a 4th down stop on downs and cement this Week 16 victory? Rip and Hassel. Rams rush 4. Throw goes to the right side. It's intercepted at the 15. Kobe Durant down the sideline. 50, 40, 30. All gas. No brakes. Touchdown. Kobe Durant to cement a Christmas Day win for the Los Angeles Rams.
I love it. Oh, we're getting bongos on a Monday morning. I didn't even know that was possible. I do love hearing our friend J.B. Long with KSBN. Good to hear him having fun. And, man, this was fun for Rams fans and Rams announcers. Kobe Durant there, with the 85-yard interception. He had 2 interceptions on the day of the 3 that Russell Wilson threw. It was crazy. It was 51-14 Rams. It was like 31-6 early in the second quarter. This thing was absolutely insane, and I couldn't have been the only one, Mark, that watched this and thought, oh man, I don't know if they're going to wait to the end of the season to fire Nathaniel Hackett now. And as we're taping, Justin, we got some breaking news here. Let's hit it. Yeah, the Nathaniel Hackett era is over. The Broncos announced their coach has been fired after only 15 games. Sad way to go out. And we can talk this game a little bit in a minute. Give the Rams some Oh, that was banned. We're not giving any flowers. Beep that out, Justin. But let's talk Hackett. It's over for Hackett. That's the bigger news now.
Yeah, it was inevitable. And I think this is the kind of late season game where any coach in his position, this is sort of everyone gets it. The exclamation point, floor falls out. Russell Wilson, who you came in to develop, kind of everything that Hackett, who, understandably seems like an engaging personality and like a likable dude. It's not really like a Mike Zimmer burning out because of your personality situation here. It's just that, what was your calling card? I'm going to come in and flip the switch on Russell Wilson, the most exciting quarterback hire of the entire offseason, and Denver's sort of hope and pride for the future, looking like the worst quarterback in the league, looking as lost as ever, which has been consistent all year long. There were those reports that he was calling out Seahawks, audibles at the line. It just seems like he's never really understood what's going on in this offense. That extends to everyone else. And then the defense, which you've wasted an entire year on, absolutely crumbled yesterday. And I think it's just, you're seeing a lot of flare-ups on the sideline, a lot of lack of accountability, in-house issues. There were all the actual game situation issues early in the year. And it's like Hackett seems completely underwater and in control of none of it. So what, as a head coach, are you offering at that point? I think there's a bit of a Peter principle for some of these play callers. You're kind of meant to stay at the play call level. Head coaches for a different type of personality and different type of, ability to control a varied group of individuals. And the Broncos have seemed out of control since the word go.
Yeah, it gives the team a chance to get a head start on the rest of the league, in theory, depending on who they wanted to hire. If they wanted to go non-NFL, they could start that process right now. It's a little more complicated if you're just trying to hire NFL assistants. They did announce George Payton, the GM, will remain with the team and lead the coaching search along with ownership. There was, the owner, George Penner, had that. And when you lose like that, it felt like the defense, led by their coordinator, Ajiro Evero. Graver, check for me if we know who the interim coach is going to be while we're recording. This is all happening, but I'll continue on. It felt like this was the game where both sides just kind of gave up, and Sean McVay, who had Evero on his staff for a long time with the Rams, he was a defensive assistant with the Rams forever. It's like he somehow knew exactly what to do, and it's putting them out of their misery. And this was a Christmas game where one member related to the Walmart clan dynasty, Stan Kroenke, who married into it, who's the owner of the Rams, was going against another couple members of the Walmart money, and apparently they were seen hugging, before the game or saying hi. They're related through cousins and all this stuff. And I think when you lose like that on what's probably one of the most watched games of the year, you lose to a 4-10 team, 51-14, the worst offense in the league like that. I don't care who you are, how new you are to the league. That had to be so embarrassing that they were just like figuring out what the statement was going to be this morning, like during that game, and just that it was over for Hackett. Oh, it's sad. I feel bad
what a
for
touching tale. Like, even the losing billionaire ownership team still floating away in their like cream-colored Porsches before deciding to fire the coaching staff. I mean, I would say this.
It's a tough business. It is. They get paid a lot, but it is a tough business.
How do you, honest question, because I think this didn't cut out the cancer for Denver at all. The cancer is the quarterback and the quarterback contract. I really am interested to see which coach thinks they can come in and fix this. They're saddled with this. And they're going to have immense belief that the fact that all of what we've seen about Russell Wilson has nothing to do with him actually just becoming a bad quarterback, that it's totally fixable. I think you're looking at a really tough situation.
No one's gonna think that it's all on Hackett. This is the move sort of they had to make. I'm with you. We'll talk about it in the coming weeks. That everyone's saying that you have to keep Russell Wilson, that he has all this guaranteed money, that it's gonna crush your cap. Mark is shaking his head, and I saw him with a really well-worded tweet on Christmas night saying that he doesn't need that. He doesn't need anyone convincing themselves it's going to work with Russell Wilson. And I'm with you. I don't think they necessarily have to do it. I think there is an argument for taking all the salary cap pain now. You could actually make him a post-June 1st cut, and it would only add $17 million to get rid of him on next year's cap. And I think taking your medicine, if you're convinced the dude can't play, is actually the better move. And Sunday's game was maybe the worst he's played all year. The interceptions were just ghastly. There was one clip someone showed on the All 22 on his third interception where Sutton is on the sideline wide open for a first down, and he's literally waving at Russell Wilson, waving. And on the broadcast, Tony Romo points out, he could have run for 20 yards for the first time, but instead Russell Wilson's trying to be a hero, and he throws it deep. And while the ball's in the air, Cortland Sutton doesn't even look to see what happens. He just starts jumping up and down, upset, and turning to the sideline and walking away from the play as if he's Steph Curry shooting a three and knowing it's going to go in. Except in this case, it was Russell Wilson, and Cortland Sutton knew it was going to be an interception, I guess, and just walked off the field and was so mad, and it was an interception. It was
I think that's to your point about my point. About your point, about my point, about not sticking with Russell Wilson is there is a human element to this, and I think it gets forgotten in all the metrics and all this business that this locker room is totally lost, and they're totally lost because they don't like Russell Wilson. I don't think at all. And when you're not good and you're unliked,
I think
you've got
they
big
don't
problems.
Like how bad he is more than anything.
That's it. It's all mixed together, right. But you don't get a feeling you know what, we're watching this guy that we've gone to war with, that we love, fading. It's this was your first experience with him. He's been a mess the entire time, and I am 100% of belief that you can't moneyball it like baseball, but you, to your point, take your medicine, you deal with the money part of it. It's a 1 year situation. It's not that different in a different universe had they traded for Geno Smith instead, who would have cost a lot less on a 1 year situation. And you get through it, you might just get better results with a locker room that is not from the word go with a new loss, with a new coach ready to stage insurrection. It's a problem.
The only problem with it is they're keeping George Payton, who made this trade. And
right.
So you just get into would he be willing to admit that mistake? Usually a move like that, and it's hard to even say usually because there's almost no precedent. This is on track to be, one of the worst trades in NFL history. It certainly has been now. Now their draft pick, by the way, gets even worse. So Seahawks fans were loving this Rams victory. I saw a couple on Twitter that, the Seahawks are falling apart, but at least they're enjoying Russell Wilson blowing this pick. I mean, it was tough. It's why back in week 10 or 11, when the Broncos were only scoring 7-10 points in a game and people were like, oh, the Broncos have hit bottom. And we've done this job long enough that it's when there's 7 or 8 weeks left with these bad teams, it's no, you can hit a lot more bottoms. And this was truly bottom because the coach got fired. They gave up a 50 burger on Christmas, and Russell Wilson got roasted by Patrick from SpongeBob.
And so what's there's Russ Wilson. Oh, no! Oh, that's called an interception.
That's close.
Bobby Wagner. That's not what he wanted to cook.
Oh, God. Did you say intraception?
He said that's what they call an interception. And I mean, he had a good line there, too. That's not what Russ wanted to cook. And even mentioned that Wagner was his teammates. I did flip over to the Nickelodeon broadcast for a little, and they were having fun over there. I think that was probably the most appropriate way to watch this game.
More fun than Broncos fans. I would say, like, where we were 7 weeks ago mentioned where we were at the Broncos, like, Sean McVay was in a dark place. Baker Mayfield was being talked about like Russell Wilson. It's kind of crazy what can happen to you in just a couple weeks, because I think if nothing else, Baker Mayfield proved, like, in a Sean McVay system, if he's used right, he can play, and he's totally a viable, very leading, almost plugged-in candidate to be their number 2 quarterback next season. I think they want that. And McVay, who was, we're questioning if he's going to even come back and coach. I don't know. I mean, who knows what will happen with that situation. But the last couple of weeks have been a very different vibe around a Rams team that it got real ugly there.
Absolutely. I'm glad you pointed that out, because even though I'm saying, like, there's a long time left in the season, you can always hit bottom. You could have said that about the Rams too, but they are going to feel better about themselves the way they're ending this season. They've had their best couple of games now in a 3-week span. They're competitive. Cam Akers is running the ball really, really well. Had 147 yards from scrimmage, 3 touchdowns, just playing with a lot of juice. McVay's showing that he can be that coach again, maybe give himself some confidence. Baker finishes 24 for 28 for 230 and 2 touchdowns. And yeah, most of them, I think 18 of those throws were 5 yards or less. But he had a nice touchdown versus the blitz. He was very controlled. Tony Romo said how, like, under McVay, he's use his eyes a little better in terms of not being as predetermined. I saw him get to, like, his 3rd read. He just looked like a very competent quarterback. To me, this was way more encouraging even than that Raiders comeback win. And, like, other guys are stepping up for the Rams, like Wagner's a leader, and Hoyt, and just things you can just feel better about. Putting a 50 burger on feels good no matter what your record is.
Yeah, they didn't waste their final 4 or 5 games, which you see teams do. Nothing changes, you don't grow. Like, they've used it to develop younger players, find a backup that they can trust. And I think you're right. Give Sean McVay a sense going into the offseason, like, I haven't lost my fastball here.
And give their fans something. All my daughter had asked for Christmas was a Rams win, and I know that place wasn't, like, super rocking yesterday. I texted our friend Jason Kleinman, who was there with his family. Perfect Sunday for the Kleinmans. You go see a 50 burger. Probably it's such a blowout you can leave early. Mm-hmm. He told me he was right behind the Broncos sideline, so he texted me about the fight that was happening before I even heard about it on the broadcast. He was like, they're arguing on the Broncos sideline. Someone just pushed Brett Rippon, and he was right. That was an offensive lineman, and Brett Rippon, the backup quarterback. So he gets to enjoy that victory. JB Long, our friend, gets to enjoy it. And then, the Kleinmans come home and they celebrate Hanukkah another night, at night. Perfect day.
Well, it's just one bullseye after the next for the Kleinman family.
All right. This is our closest thing to a bullseye here, Mark. I think we did it. What did I call it at the beginning of the show? The cold and dark podcast, the dark and cold podcast. Instead, it sounds bad though. I had fun.
I enjoyed it.
You know what? I enjoyed. I think the broadcasters yesterday tried to have as much fun as they could, including Jim Nantz. I gave Jim Nantz some credit for being as Jim Nancy as possible to start that Rams Broncos game.
Russell Wilson and the Broncos about to take the field in Los Angeles to take on Baker Mayfield and the Rams. And Santa's going to find out which quarterback has been naughty or nice on CBS.
It never gets old. I think he used the same line in 1996, and it probably, hit the same way. So
I don't know why when I heard that, it really made me laugh. Santa's got to find out who's been naughty or nice. I guess Baker's been nice, and Russell Wilson has been naughty. All right, for Mark, This was a pleasure for Justin Graver. I'll be back. We're doing a Monday night recap tonight with Jordan Rodriguez, and we'll be back on Tuesday with a special guest. And so the train keeps moving on. But until then, heed the call.